Hello and welcome back to another episode of FPL Hacks with me, Holly Shand. Today I'm going to be bringing you another how-to video in looking at how to take a hit and still gain points in FPL. I want to hear your transfer plans for game week 33 as well. Are you eyeing up a hit? Please drop that in the comments and give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Now, taking a points hit in FPL can always be a calculated risk, but when we get to a blank game week, a double game week, or a combination of those two things like we have in game week 33, in theory, that notion of taking a points hit becomes easier. We often hear fantasy managers say when we're at a blank game week that if you're taking out a blank game week player for a player with a game week, then that -4 is really a -2, because we always have an assumption that if we have a player that we're bringing in for a hit, as a minimum, that player is going to get you 2 points for those appearance points. So when you're comparing a player without a fixture to a player with a fixture, that -4 hit is really only a -2 on the assumption that that player will get to 60 minutes without getting a booking and get a 2-point minimum. Now, when you've got a blank game week mixed with a double game week, obviously the argument can only get stronger. If you are selling a blank game week player with no fixture in favour of a player with a double game week, essentially that -4 points hit becomes 0, assuming that that player that you bring in gets a minimum of 4 points, 2 points across each fixture, and then obviously anything extra on top of that is a bonus. And it's a similar situation if you're selling a player with a single game week for a player with a double game week. The base points for a player with a single game week is 2 for the appearance points. A double game week player has a base points of 4 in theory. Now, the reason I keep saying in theory is that because FPL is based on a real life game, and the thing that we need to consider here is that the course never really goes that smoothly. There's lots of other factors that we need to consider. First of all, if you're bringing in players that are rotation risks, there's no guarantee that they'll play a fixture or both fixtures and get to 60 minutes to get those 2 appearance points, especially if they are prone to a booking. If it's a defender playing in a defence that concedes a lot of goals, it could also be the case in there as well that they're going to get negative points somewhere along the line and won't meet those 2 appearance points you need to calculate whether that hit will be worthwhile. Now, we also need to think about if we're selling a blank game week player for a player with a single fixture or a double, while it makes sense in terms of bringing that player in because they're going to get you more points than the player that blanks, you're also, in most scenarios, going to have a player on your bench that can get you some points. So when you're factoring their contribution or potential contribution for a game week in there, that can make it a little bit less black and white on whether that gain will really come to the fore. And we also need to think long term in FPL. If you're not playing a wild card soon and you're looking at keeping a player for the rest of the season, you don't want to be taking players out that have good form and good upcoming fixtures just because they've got a blank game week in favour of a player that has a double game week but maybe could be a rotation risk at the moment. Looking at the teams that blank in game week 33, Leeds United stand out as a team in form at the moment, plenty to play for towards the end of this season as they look to avoid relegation. A player like Rafinha, who's been a great long-term hold for managers this season, managing double points in the previous game week, maybe isn't a sell for someone with a double game week this week, like a Leicester midfielder, for example, who could be rotated. We saw Leicester make 7 changes ahead of game week 32 because of their involvement in the UEFA Europa Conference League. So lots to consider in there. Now, well, the obvious move when we've got a mixture of a blank and a double game week is to sell any player that blanks in favour of a player that has a double. It is really important that we don't forget about the single game week assets. And I think for game week 33, this is going to be more important than ever, because first of all, if we have a look at the teams that have got a double game week in 33 to start off with, there's a few that stand out to me as maybe not being the best punts. Newcastle, 2 home games. I don't think we can argue that going for one of their players could be a good option, but the fixtures do turn after game week 24, no future double game week, so that's something to consider. Burnley, not the greatest team in the Premier League this season, battling relegation, but not great form from them either. Southampton are out of form. Leicester have got some form, but their focus isn't on the Premier League right now. When we saw in game week 32, lots of changes from Brendan Rodgers and a crunch match in the UEFA Europa Conference League midweek. That could be very telling. Leicester do have a few double game weeks towards the end of the season, so if they were to go out of the Conference League, then I think their players could be good bets for the rest of the season. But lots of options in attacking positions, and you know, with the race for European place in the Premier League maybe not that viable for the games that they've got remaining, it may be that Brendan Rodgers gives some youth players more of an opportunity and, you know, protects players that have played a lot of minutes this season and have been prone to injuries. So something that we've got to weigh up in there. Manchester United, another team that were on paper big favourites maybe a month ago for this game week. Norwich at home, Liverpool away. Now, Manchester United's form has been lacking lately. Some of their attacking assets are very expensive and maybe won't be able to live up to their price tags based on current form, having seen what we saw against Everton. So that's something to consider in there. And we also need to look at that game against Liverpool, Liverpool fighting for the title. I doubt Manchester United will get much out of that game. So you could really just think of it as a single game week plus maybe 2 appearance points if they're lucky for Manchester United assets against Liverpool. Arsenal, Chelsea away, Southampton away, another team not great in terms of form over the last couple of games. It's been a big surprise seeing their dip after this international break, but it doesn't give you a lot of confidence to be investing in a lot of their assets right now. And the final double game week team is Brighton, City away and Spurs away. I think that says everything you need to think about Brighton assets right now. They're not going to be a consideration. So that's the single game week assets that maybe do need to come into our consideration. The likes of Manchester City and Liverpool, who are fighting it out for the title, particularly Manchester City at home to Brighton. They've got a double game week still to be played this season. I can see with the fixtures at Manchester City have got a long-term hold on a Man City asset, could perhaps be prioritised over another player, particularly if you've not got João Cancelo in your team, if you've got room to get Kevin De Bruyne in your team based on his form. I think both of those players could easily be prioritised over getting a single game week player this week. Also, looking down the fixture list, Liverpool at home to Manchester United. I know that doesn't sound that appealing a fixture on paper, but believe me, Liverpool are battling it out for the title. And given Manchester United's form, I think it's absolutely viable for them to pick up 3 points in this fixture. So do not forget about those single game week players when you're in the hunt for making transfers to sell blank game week players and jump on board those double game week assets. We have to always think about motivation. Manchester City, Liverpool got plenty to play for. You look at the likes of Leicester, who are in that situation where they're still in Europe. Their motivation may not be where we want it to be. And some of the players that we're bringing in that are single game week assets, particularly from City and Liverpool, who you could easily triple up on between now and the end of the season, they do have future double game weeks. So I always say, for me as a fantasy manager, I like to play FPL as form over fixtures, and I will always prioritising going with a player with very good form. Again, we've not mentioned Spurs at home to Brighton, Son and Kane. If you've not got them already, I'd always prioritise making a move from a form player for a player in form with a single game week over players that have got a double game week but their form is lacking. Now, I hope you found this video useful. If you do still have some problems with deciding what transfers to make for game week 33, please do get in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of them. If you can drop the video a like and subscribe to the channel as well. All of your support is really appreciated, and don't forget to check out this free hit video if you are planning a free hit in game week 33. Good luck everyone.